Hi everyone, welcome and thank you so much for checking out my channel. My name is Tanny and I'm an independent author and somebody who just loves a great story. So on this channel I talk about writing, books I've enjoyed, and lessons I've learned on my publishing journey. This month is Self-Published Fantasy Month, and that is an event that's meant to showcase and celebrate some of the wonderful fantasy indie books that are out there. And since I have read and enjoyed so many great indie fantasy books, I wanted to share some of my favorites with you. All of the books that I talk about today, I will have linked in the description below so that you can check them out if you want to. I would really encourage you to support these books by adding them to your TBR, requesting them at your library, reading them, and then of course if you do read them, please be sure to leave a review for those books. Reviews are really important, especially to indie authors, because it can help the book find the target audience and find other readers who will really enjoy them. Anything you can do to support these books would be amazing. This list is going to just be for young adult fantasy. I did already make a list for adult fantasy book recommendations, so you can go check that out if you'd like. I will link it right up here. The first book series I want to tell you about is the Magic Eaters trilogy by Carol Beth Anderson. And the first book in that trilogy is called The Frost Eater. And this is a book that is set in a world that is kind of a mix of fantasy and dystopian. Something happened on this world many, many years ago that kind of destroyed life as it was before, and also brought magic to the world, so that now there are certain people who can use magic, and in order to do that they will eat different substances to use as fuel, and that gives them different abilities. So for example, some people can eat ice and then do ice magic. Some people can eat like plants and then they can do like vine magic. Our main character is a princess named Nora, and so she is a frost eater. She can eat ice and then do frost magic. And while she's traveling around her kingdom with her father, she meets this other frost eater named Cray. And Nora ends up bringing Cray back to the palace, and Cray is looking for his girlfriend named Zaisha, who has gone missing. And he is convinced that somebody in a position of power has something to do with her disappearance. And so together with Nora's help, they are trying to figure out what's going on and why people would be taking these other magic users. I really love the main group of characters in this series and just the friendships between them. There's definitely a found family element to the story where they just become really close and really end up relying on each other and depending on each other more and more, and would do anything for each other. And so I love found family stories, and I really love that part of this particular series. The main antagonist of the story is also really interesting. I won't say who it is because that's kind of a spoiler, but I was just really fascinated by this person and by the way that the author chose to tell their story. They were very nuanced and just had a greater depth than maybe you might expect to see in a YA fantasy villain, and so I really appreciated that. There's also a lot of romance in these books, and all of the romantic pairings are really adorable, and it's just really fun to watch those relationships develop with the characters. The magic system and the world building are fantastic. It's a really fun story, but it's also very emotional, and I was very connected to the characters, which just made me enjoy it all the more. The next book series I will talk about is the Tales of the Wendy series, and if you've been on my channel before, you have probably seen me talk about this book. It is absolutely one of my favorites. This is a Peter Pan retelling that centers on Wendy Darling as the main character. And Wendy is a member of the Royal Navy in this story, and while she's in the Royal Navy, she's constantly having to prove herself to everybody around her. She has a lot of good ideas and great instincts, but everybody is very dismissive of her and doesn't take her seriously because she's a girl. Even though this is a retelling, there's a lot about it that makes it feel very unique and very original, and it is very much its own story compared to the source material. The characters are all reimagined in a way that feels like a great tribute to the characters in the original version of the story, but also in a way that they're very unique and feel very much like their own people and their own characters in this story. They do feel like they have a lot more depth and complexity in this book than they do in the original, and that's something that I really appreciated. The narrative voice is also really strong and adds to just kind of the whimsical feel of the story. I really like that. 2 of the books in the series are already out, and there's a 3rd one coming, I believe, like in December of this year. They're also pretty pretty short. This one's not very thick. So if you're looking for something that's just a good, quick, fun read, I would definitely recommend this series. The next book on this list is Livingston Girls by Brianna Morgan. This is a story about a girl named Rose who gets shipped off to boarding school. And while she's there, she gets tangled up with this group of girls who are secretly witches. And eventually Rose is invited to join their coven and to learn magic. It turns out that the headmaster of the boys' school that's nearby is actually a witch hunter. So Rose and the other girls have to band together to protect themselves and figure out a way to stop him from killing all of them. The magic system in this book was something that I've never seen before, and it was really unique. They used lines of poetry to cast spells. There are a lot of characters in this book, considering how short it is. So it was hard to really get to know any of them on a very deep level. But I did actually feel like the author did a good job of distinguishing them from one another and making each of them feel unique. The focus of this book did seem to be more on the characters than on the plot, to the point that I felt like the plot actually kind of took a back seat to just getting to know the characters and spending time with them. But if you like that sort of thing and you're looking for just a quick, spooky, fun read, then Livingston Girls might be right for you. The next book I'll recommend is Waters of Salt and Sin by Alicia Klafiki. It's been a while since I read this one, so I don't remember a ton about it. I had to go through my book review for it and figure out and remember what it was that I liked about it. But I do remember really enjoying it. The world building was really interesting. It's not your traditional medieval European fantasy world. Instead, it is set in a world that is based on like ancient Mediterranean cultures. There is a caste system in this society, and our main character is named Kinneret, and she belongs to one of the lower castes. She is secretly in love with her childhood best friend, who is a member of a higher class. And when they were kids, it was fine for them to play together and hang out together, but now that they're older, that's starting to become more taboo. And so Kinneret is trying to raise her status so that she can be with this boy that she loves, but also so that she can provide a better life for herself and for her younger sister. So in order to raise her status within her society, Kinneret sets out to find this legendary island of silver, but then things get extra complicated when her sister is captured and made a slave. This is written in first person, and Kinneret was a really interesting character to follow. I really loved her determination and her strength. This is a character who has had to fight for everything that she has and continues to fight for herself and her own dreams as well as for her sister. There's also a lot of really great banter between the characters, and that's really entertaining to read. So if this sounds like something that you would be interested in and you're looking for a book that is just a little different in setting compared to your typical medieval European kind of setting, definitely check this one out. The next book on this list is Bloody Spade by Brittany M. Willows. This is a book that I beta read earlier this year, but it is releasing in September sometime. I can't remember when, and I'm super excited for everybody else to get to read it. This is an urban fantasy novel, and it takes place in a world that is kind of similar to our own, and in terms of like the modern technology and stuff that we have. But there's been this event called the Re-Emergence, and that has brought magic back to the world. Some of the magic is good and useful, and some of it is really harmful and dark and is kind of taking over things. And there's this organization called Card Play, and the people in Card Play are trying to protect the world from the threat of this dark magic. And so most of our main characters are part of this organization, and they each have different magical abilities that they use. The main character of the story is not a member of Card Play at first. His name is Yori. He has a corrupt and very unique form of magic. Early on in the story, he befriends a girl named Ellen, and she kind of introduces him to Card Play, and he becomes a part of that. But because of his magic and the fact that he can't always control it, some of the members of Card Play are very mistrustful of him and very suspicious, including Ellen's brother. The characters in this are all really interesting, and again, this is one of those books where because the characters are so strong and so well developed, I was able to really get invested in the story and really immerse myself in it. But the world building and the magic system are also very interesting and unique. It does feel very much like an anime series in a lot of ways. So if you like anime, I think this is definitely a good book to read, and I think you'll enjoy it. The last book I want to talk about is The Electrical Menagerie by Molly E. Reeder. This is a really fun steampunk novel that follows two different characters, Carthage and Huxley. Both of these characters are very different from each other, but they've banded together to have this unique robotic roadshow that they take and perform. But the show is kind of heading into financial ruin, so in order to prevent that, they sign up to join this competition where they will be competing to perform in front of the future queen. Again, it was the characters and their relationship that really made me fall in love with this book. Carthage is older and a little more eccentric, but he has really great ideas and is kind of the creative genius behind the show. Huxley is very different. He's more people-friendly and very logical. He has a strong business mindset that they need to really help the show be successful. They're both really interesting and very well developed, but as business partners, they kind of keep each other at arm's length, and there's a lot that they don't know about each other. And as the story goes along, that starts to impact them in the competition. The setting was also really interesting. It's one of those fantasy worlds that you would actually want to go live in and visit. I think a lot of fantasy worlds tend to be kind of dark and grim, and they're not really places that you would actually want to be. But I really love this world. I felt like it was really interesting and fun, and it was definitely somewhere that I could see myself taking a vacation or something. I thought that would be really fun. The writing is very solid. There are great descriptions and imagery to go along with all the different unique performances that we get to see in the show. To this day, this book remains one of my favorites, so I really hope that you will pick it up if it sounds interesting. That's all I have for you today. If you are looking for more indie book recommendations, I did already make a list of science fiction book recommendations and another list for adult fantasy book recommendations, so I will link those in the end cards if you want to check those out. I also keep a page on my website with indie books that I've read and loved, so if you ever want to check those out, those are on my website. I will link that in the description as well. Again, I would really just encourage everybody to read more indie books and support those authors. Hopefully this list gave you a better idea of where to start and where you can find some really great fun books. And then of course, if you do read an indie book, please be sure to leave a review. It can be really hard for indie books to gain visibility and to get reviews, but they're so important. And we very much appreciate every single review that we get. If you've read any of these books, or if you plan to pick any of them up, please leave a comment down below and let me know. Or just tell me about the best YA indie fantasy book that you've ever read. I'm always looking for more recommendations and more things to add to my own TBR. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And of course, you can always subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to see more videos like this in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll see you next time.